Hey all, and welcome back to Fuzzy Dutchy Gaming and the final episode of the Tornado Shot build guide series. This is going to go through what I think your final character should look like if you just want this to be a really fast mapper. There's obviously things you can do to push it further. I've not put hundreds and hundreds of divines into it, but what we'll do at the end of the video is go through the gear that you would aim for if that's what you want to do. So what I thought I'd do is just showcase what the build's like in terms of clear and DPS. There's still a few things I want to do to the build. But realistically, this is what it's going to look like at the end. So we'll stick in a Drox's map, and then we'll do a bit of clear, and then we'll go and do the Conqueror.
Change and love can go, but tell me why are you so cold? What did I wrong? What was the fault? Or what you say is I don't know. Feelings change and love can go, but tell me why are you so cold? What did I wrong? What was the fault? I thought that you loved me, I thought that you need me till you end up all this way.
So the highlights sort of show what the build is capable of at the moment. There's still much more I could do with the build, but I don't think I've got the time to do it because I actually want to go on and start a new series. So what I'll sort of do is go through how I've got the build set up, which I think is adequate for pretty much anything in the game that this build should be used for. But I'll also go through the higher end options if you really want to spend money on it, but you're going to be talking 200, 300 divines minimum. Then I'll go through the gear. The feared highlights, I think I could have done the feared. I'm just not very good at the fight. It's not something I do very often. The DPS is definitely there. I just struggled a bit with staying alive. If you're someone who's done the fight a few times, I think you'd be okay, but it's not something I would honestly recommend on the build. So it's going to treat this as a build guide, essentially, because it's the last episode. We're going to go through all of the skill gems and all of the gear. I'm going to go through what attributes you want on your gear for this setup and what you want if you're really, really going for min-maxing. There'll be a couple of crafting bits in as well, but for some things, I'll just link you to other channels because I've basically copied what they've done and I don't want to steal all the glory. So I'll link you to their crafting videos. So the whole idea of this build was to get a mapper up and running. So what we'll do is we'll go through the gear, the skill gems, the tree, and any jewels that we use. So in terms of the bow, you essentially want decent LE DPS, crit chance, attack speed, and bows fire an additional arrow. Ideally, you'd want this to be 2 additional arrows. And that's basically what you're looking for. These are pretty difficult to craft. On trade, to buy a decent 2-arrow one is about 40 to 50 divines. And it seems about right because it can cost you that much if you get very unlucky in the crafting process. So we'll go through crafting these a bit later on. The helmet is a Blackstone crest, not expensive, but the enchant is tornado shot files an additional secondary projectile. It can be pricey, but it's what you want to go for. Your amulet wants to be omniscience. In terms of your anointment, you don't want dreamer. You want anything that's going to add damage. I would think the best is probably going to be True Strike. So 45% crit chance, 15% crit multi is probably going to be the best. The reason I'm running Dreamer is because I'm only running a standard inspiration and I need extra help with my mana cost. For the quiver, you need all of these stats apart from fizz damage to attacks. That was an Exalt Slam. You need life, bows fire additional arrow, projectile speed, increased damage to bows, and you need the craft. These are super easy to craft. I'll link Elishar's channel for the quiver craft. I've gone for a cheaper version of his. He basically buys a base for about 30 divines, which is a synthesized +1 arrow base. I didn't feel it was worth the money when you could just get a nice, decent amount of projectile speed on a base. But the crafts are exactly the same other than that first initial item. We're going with just a bog standard feathered arrow quiver. He's gone with a synthesized base. What you can do on this is pick up one with fractured life or fractured bow damage, which means you're guaranteeing one of those stats. It'll be a bit harder to roll the +1 arrow because you're taking up like a mod slot, but in the long run, it's probably going to be better because you're relying less on RNG. But whichever way you go, the crafting method is the same for the video that I've linked. The rings, I'll cover the crafting for these rings. They're really simple. You're essentially looking for triple attribute rings, life, and then non-channeling skills for mana cost. Chest is a Hirizaya. The belt is an 18% synth belt, so it's 15% attributes, and then when you put your attribute modifiers on, it goes to 20. You're just using either dexterity or intelligence essences. You're spamming them until you get big strength, life, or LE damage with attacks, and then craft the other one. If you luckily hit both like I did, you can craft something else as a prefix, but really you're looking for at least 100 to 110 attributes, big life, and LE damage with attacks. That's all you really need for the belt. For the gloves, I would recommend trying to get accuracy on these. If you don't get accuracy on anything, you're going to be short quite a bit. To get T2 or T1 accuracy, I've got T2. So here you can either roll with dexterity essences. In all honesty, though, that 49 dex is probably not going to make or break the build. So I would roll with big life essences until you hit a really, really juicy accuracy roll. And then anything else on the gloves that you can get that help. So flat damage, attack speed. You can get some nice crafts from the bench. And on here, I would go for attack speed or intimidate for your implicit, and then chance to suppress spell damage is pretty important. And then for the boots, because I want to be stun immune, I'm rolling these boots with essences to get stun immune. If you're not bothered about it, you can craft whatever boots you want for this slot. They're a free slot. And then I would go with onslaught effect. And then again, the Eater of Worlds implicit is up to you because they're all pretty bad. So that's kind of the gear. And honestly, your end game gear, if you're min-maxing it, is not going to differ that much. You're just going to spend a lot more on the bow because you're going to want 2 arrows with loads of LE damage, with crit, and with attack speed. And that's where the majority of your money is going to go. And you could go with the +1 synth base on your quiver. That's going to then be your quiver being 30 to 40 divines. So if you really want to push this build, your bow and your quiver combined are going to be about 60 to 80 divines. So just be aware of what you're getting into. If you're spending an absolute fortune, Hiri's probably isn't the best. There's probably some amazing combination of influence chests, or even just a massive rare chest for some really good T2 and T1 Eldritch implicits. There's lots of options. But if you were just pushing this build to min-max, the upgrades I would make from this would be, yeah, +2 bows on here, would be +2 arrows here, synthesize +1 arrow here, and the rest of it I think is all okay. In terms of your flasks, I'm just running granite, jade, and diamond, and then a quicksilver. You could add something like a dying sun for a couple of projectiles. You need to be running really juice mats for these to work though, because you only get one charge and they don't last very long. I found that with my just Alk and Go strategy, I wasn't maintaining the charges to make it worthwhile, and I didn't feel I really needed it. So what I'll do now is go through the links. So I'm going to go through the gem links I've got and what I would recommend if you really want to spend the currency, what to go for. So I only have a 5 link in my bow because I don't need any more single target. This is for the ballistas. If you were to run a ballista setup, you would just add elemental damage onto the gem links we're going to go through. So it's ballista, inspiration, GMP, tornado shot, and then focus ballista. The reason I have 5 is because it now costs me nothing. So I can literally just spam them. And that's kind of what they're there for. I know I don't get inspiration charges, but once I start going with my main attack, then I get inspiration charges, so I get the benefit of inspiration. So if you want to 6 link it, you just put LE damage with attacks. In the helmet, you want to fit your auras because Black Sun Crest gives you +1. It's also a really good way to get what is essentially level 4 Enlightened for cheap. So I've bought a level 3 Enlightened and I've linked it to Purity of Elements to sort out all my ailments and also just give me a nice boost to LE resistances. Got Defiance Banner and then I've got Determination. We're running 1 more aura, which is a max precision. And you can just slot that anywhere that's free. We are running our live tap, sniper's mark on hit. I need to flip these. I'm getting terrible at that. Haste, which we're only using the vial section. That's very important. Don't try and reserve it. It's just for the vial section. We have a flame dash for movement. Then we've got a castle and damage taken molten shell. You could have a steel skin on left click here if you wanted. And then for the main 6 link, what I'm running is tornado shot, GMP, awaken chain, inspiration, increase crit damage, and trinity. For bosses, I'm putting in hypothermia instead of awaken chain because it's a nice swap for green gems. Ideally, if you're money bags, you want one of these greens to be a white socket so that you can swap out awaken chain and add in something like awakened LE damage with attacks. It's going to boost the single target quite a bit more on boss encounters. Your ideal links here, but we're talking like no budget, you would replace GMP with awakened GMP, and you would replace inspiration with divergent inspiration. Divergent gives you even more reduced mana cost, which means you can run anything you want on your amulet and you don't have to worry about running out of mana. Other than that, your gems are going to be the same as they are here. Obviously, you'd want 20/120 across the board. But that would be the setup I'm running and what I would do to push it just that little bit further. So the last thing I'll cover off before we jump into the tree is a lot of people like to run an inspired learning, which is definitely an option because now we're going up to take Onslaught, which we'll cover off in the tree in a second. The only thing this jewel really gives us is our stun, avoid, and a couple of nice benefits along with a bit of extra dexterity. What you can do is you can buy a pair of boots that's got the enchant from Lab, which is 80% chance to avoid being stunned if you've killed recently, along with this. So as long as you've killed recently, you're not going to get stunned. You get your Onslaught from here. You can then buy an Inspired Learning, stick it in instead of your Brutal Restraint. And as long as you take this gem here, you're covered. So this doesn't fall in your Inspired Learning. This does, this does, this does, and so does this. You could always take this if you really needed an extra one, if you weren't going this way. But you essentially need 4 notables for your Inspired Learning to work. I run a purely alchemy strategy. So for me, it's not that great. I'm not stacking my maps. I'm not getting ridiculous quantity and pack size into my maps. So it's something to think about when you're looking at the final version of the build. So let's go and have a look at the tree quickly before we move on to crafting. So the tree looks slightly different to the last episode in that now I'm dedicated to it being a mapper. I think it makes sense to take these onslaught nodes. So I've basically dropped these crit nodes here. I was taking these 2, but only because I had a half decent node from my Brutal Restraint. And then I've dropped this life node. And at level 94, this gives me this tree and it feels really, really good mapping. So things to point out that you need if you're going to gear like me. Your Brutal Restraint has to have 2 lots of Avoid Stun and it needs onslaught and kill. That's really all you need. If you get really good nodes, there are also some okay nodes to take here. So let's say you had really, really beefy nodes. Here, you could take those points if you wanted to. We need a Lionized Fall to get all this juicy damage here. And then you need a Replica Conqueror's Efficiency to get your mana cost manageable. That's really it. It's a simple tree. The jewels are going to be the same for every single person. You just need to make sure you find the right Brutal Restraint. And that's kind of it. In terms of Pantheons, I am running Lunaris and I'm running Abarath, but that changes depending on kind of what content I want to go and do. So with the tree and the gear and the gems out the way, let's move to the last bit of the video, which is going to be crafting. I'm going to go through each bit of gear. If I'm going to send you to someone else's channel to get the crafting guide, I'll put that there. If not, we'll go into Craft of Exile and I'll explain step by step how to craft these items. So I've now had my coffee and I'm good to go into crafting. Nice. Now, I'm not an expert crafter, but the ways I show you will be cheaper than buying them on trade, and considerably so. And that to me is the most important. There might be bits where you could do it slightly different. I'm not massively big brain around crafting. The stuff we're doing is not that difficult. It just can rely on RNG with the new crafting like everything does. So Quiver, as I mentioned, go to Elishar's channel. He's got a really good tutorial on how to do the Quiver. Items we're going to cover off are the rings, and we're going to cover off the bow. The belt is easy. You're just basically spamming essences for the belt until you get something good. There's no more to it than that. But with the rings and the bow and the quiver, obviously, there's more nuances to it. And the gloves, we're just looking for accuracy and any other stats you can get in it. Again, just essence spam or look on trade for the specific stats that you want. So what we're going to do is go in trade just to show you how much these items might cost. So finished ring is going to be this. I've already whispered this guy, didn't respond. This is, I would say, way too cheap. 8 divines is about right for the ring that we're looking for. The minimum you're going to craft it for, including buying it and the essences, is probably about 3 divines. If you're average, it's going to be 5. If you're unlucky, it's going to be 7. If you're super unlucky, it's going to be more than 8. So you could just buy one for 8 divines. I don't think that's particularly badly priced. But again, if everyone does it, they might go, and then 10 divines is definitely too expensive. So we're going to go on to the ring first. We're going to do everything in Craft of Exile emulator. So create new item, jewelry, ring. We're going to go with amethyst rings because we're looking for our end game item. And I think you may as well get something with decent characters on it. In terms of item level, it only really has to be 82 because that's when max strength in and dex can roll. So we'll go back to our emulator. So a jewelry, ring, amethyst, item level 82. So nice and cheap. We'll proceed. And you want a fractured base. So there's a few things to do. First thing we're going to do is it's going to have to be a fractured base. And for these rings, it's about a divine. Early on in the league, it'll be cheaper. You can get a cheaper ring base, but if we're going for our endgame item, there's no point scrimping. So we're going to go suffixes, and let's say it's got fractured dexterity. So we're going to go dexterity. We're going to have a decent roll, so let's do T2. We're going to fracture that. Once you got the ring, scour it so that it's magic. Then you use 10 intrinsic catalysts to get you 20% modifiers. Then you use a blessed orb to get your chaos resistance up to 23. We're then going to hit a regal on it because we want to get an extra mod on it because we need to use essences, and you can't use essences on a magic item. The way you're looking to craft both the rings is you are going to have a mod fractured. So in this case, we're going to say we've got fractured dexterity. We are going to roll with rage essences, which is strength, and we want to hit intelligence of, let's say, T3 plus. And it is 36 essences. If we were to change that to, it's 54 if you wanted T2. If you wanted to be really greedy and get T1, it's 108. But you do need an open prefix. So if you fill your slots up, you're going to have to annul. But we'll go back to Craft of Exile and we'll carry on. And I'll stop once we've hit it. And this is calculating kind of our currency anyway. So we've hit T3 in about the right amount, 36 essences. We'll do this for now just for the purposes of the video. Now, what we're looking to do is guarantee life with an open prefix so that we can then craft our mana cost. And that's why it's important to have an open prefix. Now, if you happen to roll big life of like 45, 50 or above with an open prefix, just craft your mana cost of skills and you are done. That's it. Don't need to do anything else. So what you're doing here, Suffixes cannot be changed. We're then going to Veiled Chaos. Now, before you unveil, you need to craft mana because mana is really, really likely to roll on your item and we want to block it. If we block mana, there's only 4 mods that it can roll. 3 double attack attributes and then there's a life and mana regen. So you're going to go to your bench again. You're going to craft mana on your bench. Doesn't matter what it is. It's just a block. So we'll put the cheapest one on it. Then the unveil is not going to be mana and there are a lot of mana unveils on rings. So we are going to unveil. What we're looking for is this here, life and regen mana. If you're unlucky, you're going to get 3 lots of damage. If that's the case and you do want life, you're going to have to go again. Suffixes cannot be changed. Veil Chaos, block mana and go again. So this time we hit it first time. So I've now got our life. We've now got this crafting mana that we don't need. So we're going to turn that into non-channeling skills here. So now that we have our dex, intelligence, strength, life. Non-channeling skills have -7 mana cost, and then you can slam and hope for, something that's decent. So we'll slam with the next, and we've got mana, which is not the worst thing in the world. And that's the process of doing it. As I say, where it gets expensive, if you get everything right, it's between 3 or 4 divines to craft your item. If you miss life, it's obviously 2 divines every time you want to add life again. But then you've got the other possibility that you hit life when you're actually hitting your suffixes and you get a super cheap ring. But overall, I think doing it yourself is going to be cheaper than buying 2 rings off trade for what's going to be a combination of 16 to 20 divine orbs. So that's how you do the rings. Super, super easy. Get your 3 attributes with essences. Suffixes cannot be changed. Veiled Chaos, block mana, unveil, and then craft your mana cost. Let's go on to the next item. So we've got a trade search again, this time for the quiver. So I'm going to send you to Elishar for the quiver. So if you wanted the quiver that I had in my build, which is a feathered arrow quiver, with these things here, and we'll say corrupted, no, because you might want to recraft it at some point. There's only one and it's 15 divines. But it's going to cost you about 8 divines to craft the feathered arrow one if you get unlucky. If you don't get unlucky, you're going to craft it cheaper. So again, I would look to craft your own. Go to Elishar's video if you want to know how to do that. So next part is the bow. We're going to look at the 2 additional arrows bow in trade. And you're looking at about 45 to 60, 80 divines for a finished bow. The way to make this bow is to craft your own base. Now, all you're really doing is buying an 86 spine bow, you're alteration spamming until you hit 2 additional arrows. So let's go into back to the main craft of Exile and let's have a look at bows. So we're going to go 2-handed bows. Okay, so we're going to go to bows and we're going to say we want to alteration spam. It's not fractured. And we want to hit 2 additional arrows. And it takes 769 combinations of like alterations and augments to do it, which is not a huge amount of money. So on average, it's going to cost you well less than a divine to hit this. So once you've got this bow, you're basically just trying to fracture it. And this costs about 4 to 4.5 divines per attempt. You need a Sacred Blossom or whatever drops from Ashabi. The Sacred Blossom on its own is 2.7 divines. And then you need 5,000 of the Ella Harvest Juice, which is just less than 2 divines for that amount at the moment. So you are looking at about 4.5 divines per attempt. And on average, it should take you 4. So that's about 15 to 20 divines to get this base fractured. So at the moment, if we look for a fractured base, there are about 30 divines. So if you just want to guarantee that you can get this base, 30 divines is not the worst price thing in the world. Because as I said, you're between 4.5 to 5 divines per attempt. You should get it obviously 1 in 4. If you get it over 1 in 6, you're spending more money. So on average, you're 20 divines to craft this bow and fracture it. If, however, you're unlucky, you might go over the 30 divines. So it's up to you what you do with this, and it also depends what the stock's like. But as you said, it's 4.5 divines roughly to attempt to fracture. So let's just say that we hit the exact average and it's cost 18 divines to fracture it. So we will fracture our mod, and this is now what our bow looks like. So at this point, we can start crafting. So from here, we need to get the quality up firstly. So we can either do Syndicate, go to Hillock, get him to 30% it, or we can use perfect fossils. So just for this example, I'm going to use perfect fossils. So we're just going to do it until we get a good percentage. So I've hit 30 here. That's fine. That's all we need. Now the base is ready to start crafting. If you really want to go the extra mile at this stage, we can actually go and do the weapon crafting on here in Harvest, where you would just go and do quality effects. Crit chance is the best one to do for this bow. Now what you're doing on the bow is spamming essences, deafening. So let's say for this sake, we are going to use Wrath because we want to guarantee lightning, and then you're going to spam it until you hit T2 of either cold or fire, or a combination of the two. So maybe T3 and tier 4 fire and cold would be fine. So if we go into Craft of Exile again, and we're going to have a look what this actually costs. So if we say we are going to fracture this again. So again, we're going to fracture our 2 additional arrows. We're going to say we want to hit either T2 cold or T2 fire. So it says it's an average of 44, but we need an open suffix. So let's say we double that because it might put 6 mods on it. So let's say it's an average of around 88. So we're going to go back to our bow and we're going to keep crafting with these essences, and I will cut back to the video once we've hit something decent. Okay, straight away we hit something decent. I didn't need to cut. So we've got T2 fire, T7 cold, and then the essence lightning mod. Now, the rolls aren't the best in terms of where it's rolled, so you're probably going to want to divine it at some point. And if you're going to do that, I'd wait because we can still brick the item. So what we're doing from here, you've got a few options. You're going to lock prefixes no matter what you do. Then you can either reforge speed to go for attack speed, reforge crit to go for crit chance, or you can do Ashleen. But Ashleen, there's only a few things that we want and they're quite rare. You're going to want either crit chance with attributes or attack speed and attributes, and that's pretty much all you're after. It's not very likely to happen, and it only really benefits us a tiny bit. So I would recommend locking and re-rolling crit, because crit chance and crit multi have about the same likelihood to roll, whereas projectile speed is much more likely to roll than attack speed because it has more tiers. Like attack speed's got like 4 or 5 tiers, projectile speed's got about 10 tiers, I think. So I would honestly re-roll crit because it's going to cost you less in the long run. And we can craft 13% attack speed anyway, which is tier 3. So it's not too bad. Even if you re-roll speed and get attack speed, you might hit one that's lower than what you can craft. So we'll just go on here to suffixes. We're going to do prefixes cannot be changed. Put that on there. And then we're going to go to harvest and we're going to re-roll crit. We hit crit multi. So then what you'll have to do is suffixes cannot be changed again. Re-roll again. And we've hit T3 crit chance. That's perfect. 28%. We're then going to go suffixes. We're going to craft attack speed. On the bench, don't cheat. So we're going to go and craft attack speed. We're going to do this, and you're basically going to keep going until you hit 13. It's hit 13 anyway, and that's your bow finished. So you have got a 850 LED DPS bow. It's got base crit chance of 8.32, fires 2 additional arrows, and it's, yeah, pretty insane. So that cost, let's say it did cost us around 20 divines for our base. In terms of spamming essences, it's probably a divine or 2. And then we've managed to get lucky in 4 divines in terms of locking and fixing our prefixes. So our bow is going to be under 30 divines to craft this bow. If we play it safe, maybe 30 to 35. So let's go and actually look, if we wanted to buy this bow, what it's going to cost in trade. So it's a spine bow. It has, okay, so it's got additional arrows. It is LED DPS of 850, which is pretty insane. So we're going to go LED DPS of 850. It has a crit chance of over 8%. And I think that's all we need. And attacks per second of 1.58. So we'll just call it 1.55. So attacks per second 1.55. And we'll see if anything comes up. It's likely there isn't one. Okay, there's this AFK one, and then this one is 45 divines, 56 divines. Yeah, so we've crafted a bow that if you wanted to buy on trade would be 45 divines. Get really lucky, you could do it for 20 to 30. If you get unlucky, it's going to be 30 to 40, but I can't imagine any world where it costs you 45 divines to craft this item. So that's covered off the rings, it's covered off the bow, and it's covered off the quiver by directing you to Elishar, because I don't feel it fair that I just copy what he does and tell you that I'm this super crafter. But I mean, most of these methods, including the rings, have been known for quite a while. They're fairly common. It's not anything groundbreaking. So that covers off all of your crafts. It covers off your bow, quiver, rings, belt, glove, boots, and then your helmet and chest and amulet are all uniques. Follow these steps. You're going to have an absolutely awesome build that you're going to have a ton of fun with. Yes, it's expensive, but the good thing is, especially when you craft in the end game stuff, if you get bored of this stuff and you craft it yourself, you're going to make a profit. Your rings will go easily for 6 or 7 divines each. Your bow's going to go for, I would think, 40. Your quiver's going to go for a really decent amount as well. So if you do decide you get bored of the build or it's not quite for you, you will easily make profit if you're crafting yourself, which is what I would recommend. If you're absolutely rich, by all means, buy the stuff off trade, but you're going to lose money when you sell it realistically. So that's it for the video. And to be honest, that's it for this entire series. I think I am going to start it again with a different character. I just need a bit of a break. So I need to think what sort of character I want to go for. And it's going to involve me learning the build first, because if I go for something I'm unfamiliar with, then I obviously need to learn the build, understand how it works, understand how I'm going to build all these videos out, because I can't just go winging it because I'm not that knowledgeable at the game. I'm knowledgeable at certain builds because I spend loads of time on them. But that's it for the video and the series. Hope you all enjoyed it. Take care and see you in the next one.